Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of Fernie City Council held at 6 p.m. on September 26, 2023. Isuk. We acknowledge that the city of Fernie is located within Kukinamakis, the unceded territory of Yakutat Nucleat. We recognize that we live and work within their vast lands. Panahunik are from Yakutat Nucleat and are members of the Tanaha-speaking peoples of British Columbia, Idaho, and Montana. I'll call this meeting to order. This meeting is being conducted by in-person and electronic means in accordance with Council Procedure Bylaw number 2446. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for an approval of the agenda and any late items. Moved by Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Ramadas. Discussion? None? Oh, I'm sorry. Different. So the motion is to defer item 9. Please, you may.
Councillor Hamilton just pointed out that he didn't hear Councillor Nixon's motion, so I would expect that it'd be good for Councillor Nixon to put his microphone on and redo it.
Fine. Yeah, I'd like to amend the agenda to table item 9.3, as I believe that although we have a cheap quorum tonight, we should also have the rest of council be present for a more fulsome discussion on this.
Any further discussion?
Need a secondary, Your Worship.
Completely agree with the
Councillor Hamilton, did
I've got no comments on the motion.
you? Further discussion? I'll call the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Adopt the agenda. Okay.
Okay, that's just to table that item. So now that is amended the agenda. Now you have to vote to adopt the agenda
As amended.
as amended.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll ask for a. Now, do I need a mover and a seconder?
No, you've got a
seconder.
you've got a mover and seconder. The agenda's been amended. Now you just move
Thank
to now you call for the vote on the amended agenda.
Okay. Any discussion, further discussion on the amended agenda? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 4.1, I'll ask for adoption of the minutes of the previous council meeting held on September 12th, 2023. Do I have a mover? Councillor Nixon, seconder, Councillor Ramadas. Discussion? Favor? Thank you. I'll now open the floor to public participation and invite the public in attendance or participating electronically who wish to comment on items listed on the meeting agenda in attendance in accordance with section 3.7.3 of the procedure bylaw to address council, except speakers must not address council regarding a matter for which a public hearing must be held or has been held pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of the matter or adoption of the bylaw. Speakers must not address council regarding a permit for which public notice must be given or has been given pursuant to the Local Government Act prior to council's consideration of issuance of the permit, and a speaker may only address council for a maximum of minutes. Merit. Do I need to promote Mr. online? Like,
Hello?
hello, Mr. Richards. Can you
Hi there.
give us your residential address? And you have 3 minutes.
Okay, I guess I just wanted to clarify, we're the owner of 572 2nd Avenue and regarding the stratification. Should I comment now or wait until that's for review? I just had one comment on it.
Yeah, if you have comments, now's the time to make your comments. There won't be any public participation during the discussion of the matter.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the only item that I noticed was in the staff report regarding the conditions for approval. It recommended adding a second sanitary and supply water line to the second unit. And I just question this on the report because it's not generally, this is something you would split within the building and then have a single sanitary and water line. So I just wanted to make sure that the wording of this was logical and there was some flexibility in this condition that we just do what's, I'm fine if we need to make modifications. I just don't want to be stuck running redundant sewage line out of the building when what's existing will serve. That was just my only comment regarding that stratification of 572 2nd Ave.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. And I got a nod from our manager of planning that that will be discussed at the point of discussing this application.
Thank you.
Merit, you want to speak? No, please come up to the podium.
I'll introduce myself. I'm Min Merritt and I'm president of the Elk Valley Rugby Club. Thank you for giving me requests that come from the rugby club. But the reason why I want to speak today is regarding the bylaw number 2484, the proposed change, written in blue at 8.2. It says discounted user group categories do not apply for space rentals or outdoor festival. I want to convey as forcefully as I can that youth groups such as our rookie rugby program need that discount on the storage space that we use to store all of the equipment for our youth rugby program. Without that discount, program is.
Can I please ask you to speak into the microphone? Councillor Hamilton isn't hearing you when he's online.
Okay,
Thank you. You'll want to make sure he hears you too.
Okay, so without that discount, my concern is that programs like our rookie rugby program will either be shut down or that we will lose the children who need it the most. A quick bit of background about the club. We formed 10 years ago. It was just a men's team. A year later, we formed a women's team. And then in 2017, so 7 years ago, we opened it up as a youth program as well. So rookie rugby is for 3 to 12-year-olds. I don't need to tell any of you how important it is to have our youth in our community active in sports for the well-being and health of the community. It is vital. As a rugby club, and it's part of rugby's philosophy worldwide, is the sport is open to anyone. Okay, it doesn't matter your age, your size, your anything. It is a truly inclusive sport. What we've discovered with youth here, as anywhere, there are two things that stop children participating in sport. One is funding. Two is they feel they don't fit in. So what we've been doing for the last 7 years is we fundraised hard. The program is not cheap to run, but we've done the best we can to offset the costs. So our children currently they pay $35 only to be part of that program. And even then, if we are aware that there's a child who can't afford it, we make it free. That means our adults, who are the minority of our club, they're about a quarter of our club, do a lot of fundraising to enable our children to participate in sport. That is how highly we value it. And I believe the whole community values that sport for the children. So then if we can offset the fundraising, the other thing is that we make sure that they fit in. We actively go to the schools. I speak to the counselors and I tell me who are the children who are not participating in sports, who are the children you are worried about, who are not socializing. We want them. We want those children, right? Rugby fits that, it works for those children who most need to get active in sports. Just one example of that, 2 years ago, I'm wearing the t-shirt now, we did a program called Girls Can Rugby because nationwide it's noticed that adolescent girls drop out of sport, over 50% drop out of sport. An initiative to address that was we had a day for teenage girls to participate in rugby. Right off the back of that, we were able to start a high school rugby team for girls. And then, of course, the boys wanted to join in. So now we have high school for girls and boys. We brought both schools together and homeschool kids, and we've made that work, right? It's vital to this community. We are bringing people together. We are getting vulnerable kids from all walks of the valley playing this sport. We were aware that there was going to be a cost. The department did let us know that we have been allowed to use the storage facility for free, which we have really appreciated for too long. And we were aware that there was a price coming. So we planned for that and we increased our fundraising. We were expecting in the region of 1,000 to 1,500 for the rental space that we have. It's 300 square foot. I did some homework. Elkford, if I bring it up for a year, would be approximately 1,200, 2,600 for the year. Sparwood, that space would be free. So I was looking in that zone. What we've been asked for, if we don't get the discount, would be over $3,000. We can't get that extra money without increasing the funds to the children that we have, and that would stop the children who need to come from coming to the program. Then you just get the more affluent kids who are already participating in their basketball and their volleyball and their soccer and their hockey. We want the other kids, and that means we need to keep that price affordable. We're doing everything we can as a club. We're volunteering massively in all kinds of things, not only as coaches, but to raise the funds. We just want the city to support us as best they can. If we could have that discount, we'd appreciate it. I might 3 minutes.
It's hard to tell. I think we need to clearly refine our systems. But I think you're at 3 minutes.
Thank you very much.
You were very eloquent, though. Thank you, Ms. Merritt. Thanks. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Seeing none, we thank those who address council, and we'll move on to item number 6, consideration of bylaws and issuance of permits arising from public hearings or public notice periods, and a report from our manager of planning on the development variance permit application DVPA 56. Similini.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just give me a second here to bring the presentation up.
Well, Manager Similini's doing that. I'd like to do a reminder. Councillor Hamilton has shared with me that when people are speaking, if they move away from the microphone, it does create cut in and out. So when you're speaking, please directly to the microphone.
There we go. So 991 7th Avenue, development variance permit number 562. The development variance permit ask is to waive sections of the zoning bylaw to allow for a dwelling unit to go in front of a business in the C highway zone. The bylaw right now states that any dwelling unit needs to be either above or behind the business. The applicant has purchased a property on the highway that was at one point in time a house and converted to a business. He wishes to convert it back to a home for employee housing and conduct the business out of the garage of the house. Our rationale for recommending approval tonight is that there is minimal neighborhood impact. Employee dwelling units are needed. There are dwelling units adjacent to the subject property, so within the area of the subject property. It does maintain the current streetscape, although the business will now be out of the garage rather than the home. However, the business isn't a ground-oriented business like a retail type use where you'd walk in off 7th Avenue into the business. And again, it does create staff housing. So through the public notice process, we did have one comment, and there was a concern that the commercial use may not conform to the bylaw. Now, I think that this has come up in council before with these types of uses where we have a trade contractor opening a business in the C highway zone. The zoning bylaw does allow for trade contractor showroom offices, and as well as storage associated with that, fleet parking, things like that. The bylaw does not allow for a workshop to occur there. So the applicant in this case is aware of that. And when we're making our recommendations to council, we can't assume that the person that's going into the business is going to do something illegal. We have to assume that they're going to be within the bylaws. So, well, that may be a concern of the neighborhood that this may happen. If it does, if it becomes a workshop, then it's an enforcement issue on the city's side. So our recommendation tonight is that council authorize the issuance of the development variance permit.
Thank you, Mr. Similini. Any questions from council? Being none, I'll ask recommendation.
Certainly. The staff recommendation is that the council authorize the issuance of development variance permit number DVP 562 for 991 7th Avenue.
Ramadas. Seconded by Councilor Hamilton. Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Lenny. We'll now move on to item number 8.1, a report from our Director of Parks, Recreation and Facilities, the Municipal Facilities and Parks User Regulation Bylaw for 8/4/2020.
Your Worship. Yeah, so we're excited to bring you today the user fee bylaw 2484. I've brought along some colleagues with me for the presentation, so we encourage questions throughout. All three of us worked on various portions of the bylaw, so we're subject matter experts in different areas. All of your questions. So progression of the bylaw started with the first draft that was presented to Committee of the Whole for review and discussion on March 21st. Following that, there's some direction from council. We did some community engagement and further research on some of the items noted by council. We further developed some policy based on we developed some policies by direction of council to remove some of the prescriptive language from the bylaw. And then what you're seeing before you today is the finished version of the bylaw. And we're looking for adoption of a first and second, third reading. So direction coming out of committee of the whole on March 21st, a few things: removing prescriptive language from the bylaw into policy, engaging community groups, pre and post season ice usage, preschool revenue and admittance fee structure changes, and providing examples of facility rental rates if we were to apply a CP rate, and some cost recovery for event support. So the next few slides are going to go in detail on each one of those directions from council. Starting with removing the prescriptive sections of the bylaw to policy. So at the committee of the whole meeting, we were directed to consider moving operating schedules from the bylaw and into policy to allow for more timely changes and updates. Using this train of thought, staff has created 2 administrative policies, an operation policy and a cancellation and refund policy. These 2 policies don't require council's approval for changes, but we're bringing it to your attention because they are administrative policies currently in place and working at the moment. A council advertising and sponsorship policy will also be brought forward if this bylaw makes it through the progressions to address a gap in advertising and sponsorship opportunities and how it's applied equitably. Like I said, this report will come forward after the adoption of the bylaw being presented here today. So the hours of operations, all the same details from the bylaw were just put into a policy. We don't need to adopt that policy, as I said, but we need council to be aware of its existence. Cancellation policy was overdue, and it includes the same language as the rental agreement forms. It provides to be useful for renters with policy. It's proved to be useful to provide renters with policy in advance. This is a cost recovery mechanism for staff, planning, and admin costs as a result of cancellations. Again, we don't need your approval, just for you to be aware. So the community engagement, we first met with community partners, as I do every 2 weeks. Some of the key takeaways from that meeting were that the proposed changes were well received. And over the last 3 years, we've worked diligently to consolidate feedback and improve the bylaw language that you see before you. Affordable equipment rental is essential for community partners, is what we heard from them to run special events successfully. We've purchased some selected equipment, and we've arranged our procedures on how we do that to improve the inventory available for renters as events have grown significantly since the bylaw's original adoption. Event organizers need more detailed information on city facilities and rental equipment inventory. So the coordinator has advanced an event rental guide for indoor facilities and outdoor facilities. It's posted on the website and shared with facility users as they apply for rentals for events. We also heard there's more transparency needed in special events and road closure approval process. So we've developed a special events guide and road closure application forms, and they've had continuous improvement to assist applicants in the event planning process. Sorry. With regards to the community engagement for user groups specifically, we held a meeting with user groups in May, and the following feedback was gathered. Noted that there's a disparity between groups regarding advertising and sponsorship sales. So this is why the advertising and sponsorship policy will provide a method to manage advertising and sponsorship in a transparent way, allowing for agreements to articulate terms and conditions in favor of the city and the community.
We heard from user groups, specifically the ICE user groups, that the seasonal use deadline that we proposed in the original revision was too late and needed to be made earlier. So the groups can successfully plan for their early season programs and camps. So we have updated the seasonal rental deadline in part 7 of the bylaw to reflect this feedback. So going forward, the preseason ice deadline would be February 15th. Regular season would be April 1st and postseason November 30th. We also heard that the ice, while being paid for, sits unused regularly. Some user groups suggested a financial penalty for the unused ice. We were unable to find any examples of other municipalities charging for unused ice time. And we do have the new cancellation and refund policy. And although it doesn't include penalties for unused ice, it does establish clear and consistent guidelines for issuing refunds for the cancellations of program registrations, facility bookings, memberships, and product sales. And going forward, we're going to work with maintenance staff to track the unused ice time and to determine if further action is required.
We also heard concerns about the prescriptive language being used from the bylaw, specifically around the aquatic center shutdown. The aquatic center user groups prefer to know the time of year when the shutdown will happen so they can plan around their programming. The operating hours policy provides information related to the facility users so they can refer to that for planning. The annual shutdown is a preventative maintenance and pool cleaning that can't be done when we're open to the public. We also heard that the user groups feel displaced by tech holiday parties at the community center. So the community center is a very popular facility for indoor recreation and special events, with requests for rental for the community center they're increasing each year. During the busy holiday season, the extended tech holiday party bookings and decorations have impeded the use for some of our user group activities and has created conflict between the groups. Historically, the city has tried to balance usage around the decorations. However, this is becoming increasingly more difficult due to the user group's growing needs. So for example, last year we had to cancel volleyball last minute and relocate them to Max Turk because the decorations. So new this year, tech is paying for the entire time the decorations are up, and they're willing to work with the city to allow some user groups to continue to use the facility during this time. So for example, the school is able to use the community center as well as pickleball. Tech is considered a commercial user, which is priority H for use. However, they have an existing rental agreement. They do get priority each year for the holiday season. So this is what's creating some conflict between the user groups. Mayor?
Does that rental agreement or user agreement have an expiration date, or is it open-ended?
It's open-ended.
One of the recommendations that came out of the committee of the whole was to look into pre and post-season ice usage. So the pre and post-season ice bookings have fluctuated over the years, and when presenting the bylaw revisions to the user groups, staff noted that council may consider implementing the mandatory 50% bookings for pre and post-season ice. We're happy to report that the preseason bookings for 2023 increased significantly. So last year we were sitting around 30%, and this year we're well over 85% booked for the preseason ice. Pre and postseason ice hours have been moved from the bylaw to the new operating hours policy.
At the March Committee of the Whole meeting, staff were asked to consider removing the preschool admittance fee and subsequently increasing the fees of different age groups. Staff were unable to locate another municipality that applied this fee structure. The revenue for preschool admissions is about $2,000 for a year. So increasing the adult admission fees would not only cover the additional that $2,000, but would incur extra costs to each adult unnecessarily, and therefore staff left the fee structure as is.
So next up, I'm going to need finance's help for this one. In the report, there's a spreadsheet. I believe it's been handed out, or Deputy Director has some copies that are updated. There were some calculation errors made on the Excel spreadsheet. Attachment C, it shows the facility rate comparison of 3 scenarios. So within the existing bylaw, there was always a 2% annual increase in the fee structure. So in the Excel spreadsheet, we've provided a BC recreation CPI at 8.41% and a Canadian all items at 10.36%. If the council were to consider a cap of CPI, it was suggested we be unable to use historical trends because it is the highest it's been in the last 20 years. And I'll offer it up to the Deputy Finance.
Thank you, Director. I was just going to take a minute to describe CPI super quickly for anyone listening, because it kind of supports why we are suggesting following CPI for service price increases. And to clarify, the spreadsheet attached here, Director Logan has suggested a bulk increase for the 2020 to 2022 period. So the rates you're seeing here encompass that entire 3-year period. Going forward, the recommendation is to follow an annual CPI rate increase. So for example, in 2022, over all of Canada, it was 6.8%. So CPI it's a widely used measure of inflation. It's commonly used by many policymakers, as many of you probably already know. It's a weighted basket of prices for goods and services. So we've given 2 options here. One is the BC recreation CPI rate. Statistics Canada breaks that out for you. And then the other one is the entire Canada CPI rate. So a couple to choose from. We believe that using CPI instead of a fixed rate for the service fee increases mitigates the risk to both the service provider, being the city, and the consumer. For example, Canada-wide CPI was in 2020 was 0.7, but 6.8 in 2022. It was 2.3 in 2008, but 0.3 in 2009. So there's some wide fluctuations there. It was also recommended that maybe we cap CPI, so something that could be discussed further. But that's just kind of why we were looking at CPI as a measure there instead of a fixed rate.
Sorry, if I may, I do have some sympathy for the notion of capping CPI, particularly if it jumps, for example, to 6.8. It's happening at a time that our community and our citizens are already struggling under inflation and increased costs for a basket of goods, as you suggest. And is there something we can do? I appreciate your perspective, Deputy Director, that it mitigates the risk to the municipality, but I don't see that it mitigates the risk to the consumer, the user of those facilities, except to say that they will potentially understand the.
If I may, the reason that I pointed out the years in which CPI was so much lower is to show how by following CPI, perhaps you could have a year where your price increase is only 0.3 instead of 2%. So, we're following it both ways, up and down. So.
Yeah, no, I could appreciate that, but and maybe I'm being naive, but it would be nice to protect our community from the significant spikes in service, their cost of the service, they access the service. So while I wouldn't suggest a floor, because there's obviously potentially times where it will be quite low, but I do worry about having it sort of open at the top end. I don't know if anyone else wanted to comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think that no matter what, I think we all lose. Is there anybody else? Is there any other organizations or businesses that cap their CPI and they're increasing their user fees or their supplies, like our chlorine or anything like that. Is there anybody else out there that does that?
Respectfully, through to Councillor Nixon, I don't have that information in front of me, but I can definitely come back.
Sorry,
If
I
may,
don't,
Your Worship.
sorry.
If I may, I have my hand up.
Oh, yeah, please, Councillor Ham, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. I'm not sure really how to formulate my question. So pardon me if it's a little bit wordy or rambling, but I appreciate what you're saying about mitigating the risks to our users and not leaving CPI to potentially go whatever the high end might end up being. But I'm also to staff's comment about capping the risk or mitigating the risk to the organization. At the end of the day, it is essentially the citizens of our community who are going to be paying for these services, whether it's directly through user fees or whether it's through operating funds from from taxation revenue. So I guess my question, I think, is along the lines of, do we know for any of these specific rate increases what that percentage of operating, what's the word I'm looking for, subsidy might be? Is there, sorry, let me rephrase the question. Is there a way to know what percentage in an escalating environment, what percentage is going to have to be recovered by operating expenses versus user fees?
Your Worship, if I can ask a clarifying question, I want to make sure that I understand the question from Councillor Hamilton correctly. Councillor Hamilton, are you looking for an idea of the amount that would be paid by general taxation versus the amount that would be paid as a user fee or a rental fee, given some scenarios of, say, we capped CPI at, or we capped an increase at X, and we found inflation or costs were increased faster than that, what that offset or that shift may be?
Correct. Yeah. And I guess maybe even more directly, do we know that, if CPI has gone 10%, but we've set a cap of 8% for user fee growth, does that mean that 2% of the, where would that 2% difference, because our costs have gone up by 2% overall, what does that actually correlate to? We're probably getting into a lot of math here that is going to be tough for staff to answer on the spot, but.
If I may, I guess that's the nature of my question is it possible to run some sensitivities to understand what it looks like to users with a cap, without a cap, using some historical CPI numbers so that we have a sense of what that impact is going to be to, because I also appreciate it's an impact of the city. I'm not blind to that.
I may, Your Worship, we can run some sensitivity tests. These questions are definitely not anything that I'd be prepared to answer tonight because I just don't want to misrepresent the financial information that we're talking about. All other things being equal, if our cost to provide a service goes up by 7%, but we only increase those fees by 5%, and we're not a profit generating organization, that 2% difference has to come from somewhere. So it is coming from property tax. But I can definitely do a bit more analysis if that's what council would like.
I don't want to speak for all of council, but I'd be more comfortable making a decision on the numbers if I had a sense of that. Ramadas?
I agree with you, Your Worship. In addition to that, what would actually be helpful for the council is also maybe a sort of a case study. If you have a particular user group, what's the impact for this typical user group is going to look like? versus a particular individual who's got a kid who's, going for a swim lessons or whatever it may be. So a couple of cases also would give us a better sense of what the impact is going to be for our taxpayers. And also will be useful for us to communicate to the wider citizens as well.
And I appreciate we're not here to create a whole bunch more work, particularly you, Ms. Cook, but is that doable?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
So next up, we got a slide for cost recovery for event support. So we do have some scenarios where we've provided some examples, and you can find that on page 56. Your agenda pack. So we've prepared a list of event support scenarios. The list includes a breakdown of staff costs, numbers of hours, and equipment fees using rates currently charged by the city. In this example, to move the bleachers from James White Park to the dirt jumps, which is a realistic, real life scenario, it costs approximately $228 per bleacher. These charges have not been applied previously, and staff are recommending this as a cost recovery mechanism instead of increasing budgets to absorb these unknown costs. The user group discount, I need to note, does not apply to the outdoor event infrastructure section or the addition of cost recovery for staff time and equipment.
Thank you, Worship. On our spreadsheet, it's 195.96. Are they different numbers?
This out of the way. 2890. I've been corrected here. So there's an older version where we did not apply benefits to the staff time. So it's not in the agenda package, the new part. So that's a correction, my apologies. We did do calculations using a set fee for staff time, but we had mistakenly not applied a percentage to recover benefits.
Thank you, Logan. It's just a small number, but I really appreciate.
So some other bylaw revisions that we just wanted to add in, so council was aware. From a lot of the feedback, we've included a number of added definitions, which we're needing clarity for a lot of the users that book our facilities. You can kind of see these changes from the track changes version, and I'm hoping you're referring to that because it is, it's somewhat a complicated change to the bylaw. So that copy in the back at the end, I believe, last attachment. It does have a version of blue, which are additions that council's seeing new since the first presentation at committee of the whole. We've added a last call fee. This was fairly popular for users that would come off the ski hill at the end of the day and try and catch the last hour of a public swim to use the hot tub. So we've included that for a reduced admittance fee for the last hour of an evening. Also, after exploring some fees and charges of other municipalities, we determined sort of a base electrical fee to include in Schedule A. This was missing from the bylaw previously, but with some work happening at the skate park, specifically for vendor tie-ins and also extending a service to Annex Park. Valuable to bylaw. And also the legal feedback, once reviewed, it included a lot of improvements for legal clarity, a lot of small changes for wording, just to provide that legal buffer. So further discussion, addressing the comment earlier in the public participation, the discounts for dedicated space rentals. So this was brought by my attention from Rugby. Typically, historically, the discounts have never been applied to dedicated space rentals. I did a lot of digging from previous reports of my predecessors and tried to understand what the intention was of the fee structure for discounts. I would say it was inconclusive. So I'm here today to ask council. You'll see in the bylaw, it's presented as not being applicable to the discount structure. And we've provided a breakdown attachments. So if we were to apply, for example, with the Ghost Riders, a 40% discount, which they would be entitled to of their lease space. Right now, they pay roughly or exactly $17,598 a year. With that 40% discount, they would pay $10,558 per year. So that's like the extreme version. That's probably one of our biggest income base. Figure skating is another example that's very comparable to rugby. It's around that 280, 300 square feet. They currently pay $2,646 per year. With 50%, they'd pay $1,323. So the point I'm trying to make is it's a significant impact to what we currently have as revenue for dedicated space. I'll provide additional comments that space is a premium at the city. It always has been. We've done tremendous work on sort of cleaning up dark rooms that were occupied on. We've done a good job of sort of working with get to a level where they're only storing what they need, finding those spaces so they can use them effectively. No one previously has asked for this discount, so I didn't know the proper way to respond from the inquiry from Rugby. Rugby is one of two groups that has not been charged for dedicated space, and it's part of the work that I've been doing with my team to sort of clean up loose ends. So it is something that I'm not sure what to do, and I am asking council discussion on this.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Logan, and thank you for the clarity on that spreadsheet, because I wasn't entirely sure what you were trying to tell us with that. Because I did note the addition of the line about discounts don't apply to dedicated space rentals. So when I looked at the spreadsheet, I thought, well, it wasn't clear what exactly I was meant to take from this. So I very much appreciate that clarification. And when I look at the number for rugby, for example, and your commitment to work with community, what are the options for them? Because that is a significant $3,100 is a significant fee for a working very hard to support youth in sports, and waives fees for those kids who can't afford it. What are we doing to help their needs?
We have sort of implemented a while ago. We started a pilot project for dead rental program. We offered it to user group as an alternative to space within. They're 100 square feet. They're at that $10 per square foot rental rate, and we have two examples of working nicely. We also have another version that wouldn't work for rugby. They have significant amount of equipment, That's a small storage box, and I think roughly 25 square feet. Again, it's applied at the $10 per square foot. It's a steel job site box that we can move to, say, the pickleball courts, include some equipment there, so they building and they don't take up other valuable space from other work, for example. Of course, there's always flexibility and negotiations on the space. With example with rugby, I don't think the entire space is utilized. So it is a large room, and part of the problem is, there's only one lock and key for that room. So if one group has access, nobody else really can, unless it's set up a little differently, which is also an option. Well, other than that, what's noted in the bylaw is options for.
Thank you. So the circumstance, well, first, I appreciate finding charge. So that,
My apologies, Your Worship, we can't hear you online.
okay. Is that better?
It is, thanks.
Teach you not to show up, Councillor Hamilton. And where we can be flexible, to your point, like if it's a space that can be shared and so multiple parties can foot the bill, and potentially have one lock with different combinations, so you know who's accessing it at various times. I guess ultimately I would encourage us to work with our community groups to make sure where they're stepping out in terms of trying to help the community, that we're doing the same in turn. Just as a philosophical comment.
If I may, just one point of clarity too, it is dedicated space rental. Just to clarify that for council and anyone who's watching, the same $10 a square foot wouldn't apply for, say, the Max Turk equipment room, where there's various groups sharing space, like dedicated room. Clarity. Last slide, I won't bring it up, but it is the recommendation. Are recommending give first, second, and third reading for the bylaw number 20.
Being none.
And Your Worship, we were wondering if council, the discussion around council want to amend that.
Yeah, fair. Thank you. That would be my preference. Personally, to understand.
Currently, staff are working on a couple resolutions picked up from the things we understood to be discussed, and I'm just at that. I can provide those. So there was two examples, and they were around sensitivity analysis of the suggested CPI increases, showing the financial implications on user groups, and I can read that one out if you would like. There are two, and the other one was with respect to financial implications of fee changes on representative user groups. So kind of two different thoughts there. If you'd like, I'll read out the first one.
Please.
Okay, so from that conversation, it's that staff provide sensitivity analysis of the suggested consumer price index increases to illustrate the effects of the financial implications on specified user groups. And we would ask that council provide examples of user groups.
Yeah, I can suggest slight amendment, including cap. Our director
Sorry,
of finance.
everybody, can I remind you to speak into your microphones? I'm not hearing what's happening.
I'll leave it to finance to pick where the cap. Forward.
So the suggested wording is that staff provide sensitivity analysis of the suggested consumer price increase index, consumer price index increases and potential caps to illustrate the effects on facility users. I can put that into the chat.
Seconder. Further discussion?
Thank you, Worship. I think that, you know, I mean, we're going to spend a whole bunch of time analyzing how much we're going to be looking at capping small group, and nobody else is going to be capping it for this. So all of our people that supply our chlorine, all the people that any of the equipment that we use, nobody's capping it for us. So where does it go? It goes on to back to the rate. So at the end of the day, and it just creates more work. So I'm not in favor of.
I would only respond that I'm not in favor or not in favor of a cap. I want to understand what a cap potentially looks like in terms of fluctuations in CPI, because I am sensitive to impacts to our users, particularly as some people can't access directly cost related. That looks like in the context of a complete overhaul of our bylaw and fee structure, I think it's prudent to understand all the variables before final output. Testing it will output, but
I agree with that as well. Between this one and the second resolution, I think it'll give us a whole overall picture of what the groups as well as individuals. It may influence our decision, but
yeah, and I personally, I think it is a responsible step to understand what the various further discussion. And I will call the question. Favor? Favor? All opposed?
My apologies, Your Worship. I did not even know we'd moved into voting here. I'm hearing very little of what's actually coming out of the chambers right now.
Okay, that's unfortunate.
I would,
Mr. McConnell.
sorry, and it might be my microphone is on. I apologize. I would recommend you have a mover and seconder on the motion, Councillor Hamilton.
I can read the motion in the chat. And I will vote in favor of that motion.
Okay, thank you. Three in favor. The joys of a new system. I'll just stare straight ahead. I'm not going to turn my head. All opposed. Councillor Nixon is opposed. Thank you.
Okay, so that was the first motion, and I will put this next motion that we have wordsmithed into the chat, and I'll read it. That staff provide 3 scenarios to represent financial implications of fee changes on representative user groups. And of course, council can wordsmith that to make sure it captures what was discussed.
Your worship, at least for me, reads well.
Thank you. Ask for a mover. Councillor Avidas, can I ask for a seconder?
Just a point of clarification, is this for CPI as well, or is this just in general for you?
This would follow on from the sensitivity analysis that we've asked for.
I'll
Calling.
second it.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Any further discussion? All in favor?
And sorry, I do have.
Go ahead.
I apologize that I'm really struggling to actually hear what's being discussed in chambers right now. I'm not sure what's happening with the microphones because I can see people's lips moving and see that you're pointing at the microphones, but words aren't coming through on the audio. So I kind of actually missed where this motion came from or what the discussion around this motion specifically was. And I'm a little bit concerned to what I caught very briefly of Councillor Nixon's point in the previous motion about what benefit is this going to provide us as far as a council in our decision-making process? Because if costs are going up, someone is going to need to bear those costs. Our costs aren't going to be capped, and we're still going to have to make some tough decisions as to, is it a user pay system or is it a fully subsidized system? What this is going to look like for every user group is going to be different. We can pick 3 different user groups, but that's not going to encapsulate all of the user groups and all of the different scenarios in any given scenario. So and maybe it was discussed, but I'm really missing. I missed the context of the relevance of this to our decision-making process.
No, I appreciate the question. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Councillor Hamilton? Give me a thumbs up if you can.
I can, yes.
Okay, thank you. If I can sort of encapsulate the conversation, this follows on from the sensitivity analysis. And while we've already agreed as council, we will rarely, if ever, have perfect information. This will give us sort of a fulsome view of what this could look like in our community to help inform our decision making, because this is a significant overhaul of the fee structure, and it would be nice to know how that will land in a sampling of user groups across our community.
Thank you. I heard that loud and clear.
Thank you. So I have a mover and a seconder. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councillor Ramadas, Councillor Hamilton, and myself are in favor, and Councillor Nixon is opposed. And I am sensitive, as you know, Councillor Nixon, to the work this creates. It just, for decisions of this magnitude, I like to have the best information possible. Thank you, particularly to our finance group on who this work falls. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Ramadas.
Just a clarified question, like, what's the expiry date on this bylaw? When will it be reviewed in the future?
Originally, when the previous bylaw, this bylaw is meant to replace. The director at the time, Community Services, mentioned that typically a bylaw of this nature would be reviewed every 5 years. There was some work to do after actually implementing the bylaw in 2020. It was difficult over COVID. That's why you're seeing it a little bit earlier. There was a lot of gaps to fill, gray areas to shade in for the public, just to make it easier for everybody. But yeah, you wouldn't expect to see this for another 5 years unless there was a mountain of new information that came to us or problems that came as a result of new bylaw. But you wouldn't see a presentation for probably another 5 years on the bylaw. Hopefully.
Your worship, council may at this time as well, if they wish to, rather than giving 3 readings, can give first reading to this bylaw as it sits pending that review, and then make amendments if they choose to do so later, or may choose not to give reading at this time and just wait for that information.
Well, my preference would be to give it at least first reading to acknowledge the work that's gone into it, and then receive that information back before we advance the bylaw.
Yeah, and then I would say that staff recommend that council provide first reading to bylaw number 2484, 2023, the Municipal Facilities and Parks User Regulation Bylaw.
I ask for a mover. Councillor Ramadas, seconded by Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, Councillor Hamilton had his hand up too. He was trying to.
Any further discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And I do apologize to everyone present for the technical challenges we're experiencing this evening. We'll get it ironed out. That takes us on to item 9.1, the Mountain View Dike and Coal Creek Bin Wall Engineering Services, a report from Project Engineer Line.
Apologies, as always, technical difficulties.
Night's the night.
I promised your worship that it would not be perfect.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you all this evening. I'm here to talk about the outcome of the request for proposals for engineering services for the Mount View Dike and Coal Creek Bin Wall. And wow, that was right. Okay. First, some background on this project. In 2019, the City of Fernie Flood Mitigation Plan was completed. It identified and analyzed flood hazards in Fernie and prioritized protection projects based on risks and consequences. The Mount View Dike was analyzed as the 3rd most priority project, and Coal Creek Bin Wall is number 8. Since that flood mitigation plan was completed, our first project was actually in 2020. It was the grant-funded extension of the Mount View Dike down at the downstream end. If on the screen, it's kind of that little loop at the bottom that protected the main sewage pumping station and James White wells. And then, unfortunately, it was entirely grant-funded, but it wasn't enough money to actually the extension. So this year, currently right now, if you've driven around Mount View, we are doing the final part of the extension and have closed down that road behind Max Turek.
So this year, staff applied for and were awarded a grant for further work on the Mount View Dike, plus the Coal Creek bin wall. We were awarded 1.98 million from the Union of British Columbia Municipalities Community Energy Preparedness Fund Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Program. To complete the design and construction of a portion of the remaining projects on the Mount View Dike and Coal Creek bin wall. Those are first raising 0.5 kilometer of the Mount View Dike. We're armoring the river training burn that's kind of on the edge of the Coal Creek and the river. We're doing some investigations inside the bins of the bin wall and doing riprap repairs of the toe of the bin wall and pathway improvements on top of those two areas. The project timeline here is that by spring 2024, we would have completed the design. Right now, the raising is at 75% design level, and the other two items are at pretty much 0% design level. And we would do the permitting. And then construction would kick off in next summer, and everything would be complete by the end of. Our request for proposal was posted to Fernie.ca and BC Bid for pretty much the month of August. The scope of work was what we just talked about. Because this was engineering services, it was completing the design, completing the regulatory approval processes, paperwork, to prepare and administer a tender for the construction contractor, management of such construction, and post-construction services. 2 proposals were received, Sweet Tech Engineering Consultants and McElhaney Limited. So the staff had a evaluation committee that reviewed the proposals on the pie chart criteria right there. So project understanding methodology, the firm experience and references, team member experiences, roles, responsibilities, and fees. And you can see the weighting, there's more weighting on the team members' past experience on this type of project and comprehension of the project scope. On a project with this large scope, a solid history of experience in these types of jobs is essential, we think, staff think, to limit risks like construction delays and overruns. The proposal prices range from just under $200,000 to just over $400,000, which is 10 to 20% of total budget from that grant. Staff recommendation is to award the contract to McElhaney based on their evaluation score. They received the highest rank from all evaluators. McElhaney has a strong project team with many recent and relevant past experiences here in Fernie. They've completed similar projects on the Maiden Lake Dike, the Mount View Dike, the expansion that's going on now as well, and the Annex Dike. Recommendation up on the board.
Thank you, Engineer Line. Any questions? Councillor Hamilton?
No questions. I heard it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing none, I'll ask Mr. McConnell to read the recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff recommendation is that a consultant contract for engineering services for Mount View Dike and Coal Creek bin wall improvements be awarded to McElhaney Limited in the amount of $194,956 plus GST, and that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute any necessary documents related to this contract.
Can I have a mover? Councillor Ramadas, seconder. Councillor Nixon. Any further discussion? Councillor Nixon.
I just want to say, so the floodplain mapping was done in 2017, and then council received the Fernie flood mitigation plan in 2019. And when we got that, it seemed really daunting and quite scary. Being part of a flood in Calgary in 2013, you see the devastation that happens upon flooding. and homes and properties are destroyed and people are devastated. Since the introduction of the Fernie flood mitigation plan, staff have been slowly chipping away at this, and I just want to give you kudos to protecting our community.
If I may, I will take the thanks for the entire staff who've worked really hard to get grant money and to forward these projects.
Staffs, how's that? Plural.
Staffs.
Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Lyon. We'll move on to item 9.2, stratification of a previously occupied building, 5.572 Second Avenue. A report from Mr. Salini.
Thank you, Your Worship. Give me 1 second here to organize the desktop and I will bring the presentation up. Okay, so this presentation is for the stratification of a previously occupied building. I have a bit of a hot mic. Is everyone hearing me okay?
Yeah, I'm
Been kind of like that all night, but
off and on. I don't know if that speaker is either too loud or too close to the microphone.
or maybe I'm just too loud. How's that? Is that better? Check. That seems better to me. I can't hear the buzzing, but
it's
as
better
long as
from a
Councillor
feed.
Hamilton and the people viewing at home can hear me.
Yeah, I'd have to defer to
Okay.
Council Hamilton puts his thumb up.
Perfect.
We're good.
Okay. Thank you. So stratification of a previously occupied building at 572 Second Avenue. This is the building that currently hosts the Fernie Arts Co-op. So it's a fairly familiar building to people in Fernie. So the background here is that the applicant did previously apply for this or applied for the stratification of this building sort of as the building was being renovated. Typically, we would do this stratification of a previously occupied building prior to that. That being said, we don't have a process in place, like a written process or procedure for this. So it might be something we want to look at in the future to help these applications go forward consistently. So the building is currently undergoing extensive interior renovations. Exterior renovations have been occurring on the building as well. There was a rooftop addition that was done to the building. So the plan is to stratify the commercial unit on the ground floor from the residential unit on the upper stories. Now, it's important to note that the residential unit on the upper stories is new in that it wasn't an existing residential unit beforehand, and that's important in council's consideration tonight, because I'll note later that council does have to consider the requirement for rental units as opposed to individual sellable units, and we all know the answer to that question right now in Fernie. So it does sort of ease that need. Just knowing that we're not taking a unit out of the rental fabric and privatizing it. So it's just a new dwelling unit into the dwelling unit fabric overall. So we are recommending approval tonight. And there are several conditions that I'll just run through quickly here. And I can also comment on Mr. Richards, who the applicant, his comments earlier tonight as well. So we are recommending that council approve. The first condition is that the building must substantially comply to the building code. We do have a building code analysis for this building to guide that forward, and renovations, like I said, are ongoing on the building. So our staff, our building officials are currently working on the file, and the applicant is currently undergoing those renovations. So once we know that that building is up to code, then that condition will be satisfied. Also, we want to make sure that there's no encroachments into surrounding properties. So if there are any encroachments, they would have to be taken care of through easement or removed. We also want to make sure that the applicant has noted that they have talked to the Fernie Arts Co-op about this. So we just want confirmation that that's happened, and to ensure that the Fernie Arts Co-op is aware that it's happening. Typically, this is a condition that is related to residential units if they're being stratified. But given the high profile of Fernie Arts Co-op, we wanted to make sure that they have been communicated to as well. We also want to make sure that the roof drains on the top of the building, if there are any, are not tied into the city's sanitary system. So this is sort of a historical issue throughout Fernie, that a lot of those buildings historically did have cross connections. A lot of them have been taken care of. So again, we just want to make sure that that's not the issue here. And if it is an issue, it will just have to be taken care of before the stratification is approved. And now I can comment a little bit further on this next one, that the applicant shall install individual water and sanitary services to each strata unit to our satisfaction, to the city's satisfaction. So what we've seen in the past with previously occupied buildings, especially in the downtown areas, is we wouldn't expect a new service to come off of the main in the lane or in the avenue. We would utilize that existing service as long as that service has enough capacity to serve both units. But there would need to be individual shutoffs or individual access to those services once they enter the building, so they can come into the building as one and then split off. For example, with water, we'd need individual water shutoffs where they come into the building in a common area, so that if something goes wrong with one of the water lines in unit A, say, that wouldn't put unit B out of water for an indeterminate amount of time.
Sorry, Mr. Simley, so that's individual servicing at the point it enters the building?
That's correct, Your Worship. It could be at the point where it enters the building or somewhere else in the building, as long as they are separate, so that, again, they need that separate shutoff is important, so that if you have an issue in your unit, you're not putting the residential unit above you out of water for however long it takes to fix.
Thank you, because I could understand the proponent's question. The way it one reading could be that they need to provide a second water service to support the building, which is not the case.
Yeah, that's correct, Your Worship. And it is important to note, though, if we were dealing with, let's say the applicant were putting 5 units in, you may need to upgrade the size of that water service coming into the building just to handle the fixture count. In this case, we don't believe that that's the case. So.
Thank you very much.
And lastly, the applicant needs to submit a final strata plan for sign off from the city's approving officer. Now, as far as the legislation goes, I just wanted to go through it quick, because I think that this process is sort of new to a lot of council. I know that Councillor Nixon may have seen 1 or 2 in his time, but there are some, the Strata Properties Act sort of lists a lot of requirements that need to be followed. Section 242 of the Strata Property Act, subsection 2425A, but if you want to Google it, you can read it, but I will go through it here a little bit. Section 242.5A stipulates that council cannot approve the strata plan unless the building substantially complies with the applicable bylaws of the municipality. Now, in my staff report, I noted that we put a condition in for that. That condition isn't there. Like, I didn't just read through it. It was removed. However, it still is a requirement, as it is ingrained in the Strata Properties Act as being a requirement. So if council wants to change the resolution tonight to include that, they can. It's sort of belt and suspenders to make sure that it happens, but it is already in the Strata Properties Act. So
I'm comfortable with the belt on its own. Thanks.
Secondly, that it must also, council cannot approve unless it complies with the British Columbia Building Code. Now, may seem like a little bit of a flip-flop here on the last one, but we just wanted to note, and we wanted to put that as a condition in this staff report, because it is specific to that building code analysis that was done. So that building code analysis came from a qualified registered professional from the applicant. And we just wanted to make sure that is followed. So it was left in as a condition. And then 242 subsection 6 stipulates that council must consider certain things. So the priority for rental accommodation. As I noted, this unit was, I think, previously used as an office, but it had been upwards of 30 years since it had been utilized. So this unit, this strata dwelling unit is a new dwelling unit to the city. So we're not tonight. We're saying that we aren't going to require that any sort of covenants or anything like that be put on title to ensure that it remains as rental. We have to look at the relocation of persons in residential dwellings. Again, we're not saying that the Fernie Arts Co-op is being relocated. That's hasn't been discussed, and that's between the property owner and the tenant. But we did want to make sure that the Fernie Arts Co-op was aware of the stratification occurring. Life expectancy of the building. With a heritage building, it's obviously very important, but there have been upgrades made to this building. So we expect that the life expectancy has increased as a result. Major increases in maintenance costs due to the condition of the building. Again, improvements have probably brought those down, and those improvements could be considered maintenance in many cases here. And then any matters that council may deem relevant. That is, I guess, again, back to the Arts Co-op and requesting that the applicant notify the Arts Co-op. That would sort of fall under that category as well. So that is it for the presentation, and I will leave the recommendation to Mr. McConnell to read. We can all pull up a chair and listen while he while he reads it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Semolini. Any questions from council? McConnell, I hope you got a glass of water there. If I could ask you to read the recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not my longest soliloquy, but close. The staff recommendation from Manager of Planning is that council approve the proposed strata conversion of a previously occupied building for the building located on Lot 13, Block 13, District Lot 4588, Kootenay District Plan 734, 572 2nd Avenue into two strata titled lots, subject to the following conditions being addressed prior to the endorsement of the strata plan by the authorized signatory of council. A, the building must substantially comply with the British Columbia Building Code. This includes, but is not limited to the items listed in the Building Code Analysis Report titled Building Code Analysis, Fernie Multi-Use Development, dated April 14th, 2023. B, any encroachments into adjacent properties must be removed or authorized by easement registered at the Land, Title, and Survey Authority of British Columbia. C, the applicant shall notify the tenants of the subject building and submit proof of this notification to the city that the strata application will be moving forward. Further to this, any tenants should be given 6 months notice prior to any strata lot being put up for sale. D, assurance from the applicant that the roof drains are not cross-connected to the city's sanitary sewer system. E, the applicant shall install individual water and sanitary servicing to each strata unit to the satisfaction of the city of Fernie. And F, the applicant shall submit a final strata plan in substantial compliance with the approved draft strata plan and in compliance with all applicable bylaws of the city of Fernie and regulations of the province of British Columbia.
I have a mover. Councillor Nixon, seconded by Councillor Ramadas. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Semolini.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Under our amended agenda, we move on to item 10, correspondence. Any discussion? Councillor Hamilton.
I would love to discuss this. And my question reading this letter is, how much staff time is this discussion or something along the lines of having a meeting to discuss moving forward with this with them as partners, is that going to take?
Mr. Bornowski, do you have any comments?
Your worship and council, I think I would ask Manager Similini or Director Lennox to comment. It's going to particularly be a planning initiative where we would conduct a pre-application meeting to get a sense of scope of the project and what would work, and then be able to answer that question in more detail, but I might hand it over to them.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Being a capacity question, I think that these types of applications sort of coming forward do put a little bit of a strain on our capacity, just because we're busy working on other applications and development permits, building permits, those types of things. However, that being said, initiatives like this are important and maybe needing to be prioritized. So I don't have any numbers specifically, but we would support the applicant or the group in moving forward with pre-application meetings, as Mr. Bornowski had noted.
Thank you, Mr. Similini. And given some of the examples they cite, it sounds like it can be a very simple installation. It doesn't strike me as complex, and it almost struck me to maybe point them or connect them to another community group. The community garden comes to mind in terms of a location where, an installation like this with potentially with a bench, they could work together, because I understand that there's the angel garden in the community garden already. So there seemed to me to be a bit of harmony with that initiative. So that was my initial thoughts. Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Worship. I know that in discussions with the FTA, they're always looking for creative ways because they get a lot of requests for benches in the community, and having some of these on the trails would be really nice. Would break my heart, but it would be really nice.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Mr. Similini. I think maybe I'll maybe take it upon myself to respond and have a conversation with the group and see if there is a joint effort that can advance this without too much complication or staff time. Mr. Barnowski.
Thank you, Worship. If upon that follow-up an application is required, a pre-application meeting with our team would flag for us how much work this would be to move across the line, at which case we could bring forward information for council to consider on that if that's needed.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll leave it at the conversation level at this point, and then see if we can advance it without too much trouble. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Item 11, reports from council members. I'll pick on you, Councillor Hamilton, given that you're remote and
easy to pick on when I'm away.
It is unfortunate. Thank
Certainly. You. I don't have much to report. I've considered writing out everything I've done over the last week, but then thought I would just keep it nice and brief. Was away at UBCM, the Union of British Columbia Municipalities conference last week. As with all of the conferences we go to, whether it's AKBLG, LGMA, UBCM, FCM, there's so much more value to these conferences than just the going and the being there. Had some fantastic conversations and meetings with various ministers, provincial ministers and their staff. attended a number of different seminars and sessions to train on stuff from affordable housing to climate change, impact mitigation, but also just the opportunity to network and connect with colleagues from around the province and understand the problems and the issues that communities right across the province are experiencing, how we're sharing a lot of the same challenges. So the opportunity to network and share resources, share ideas, for me personally was extremely valuable and brings untold value back to the community, I find. So I have started talking a lot more than I had initially planned, but I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Nixon.
What Kyle said. No, I just I want to say that first off, I want to thank staff for getting us in here. It was a bit of a journey, I'm sure. I think the last time we were in person with public in the room was July of 2020. So good job. Secondly, I did attend the Union of British Columbia Municipalities as well in Vancouver last week. I was super proud of our team that was there. The binders were great. The conversations were great. All the networking that we did. Although we're not going to see any, we didn't come home with any checks. I think we'll see that eventually. So I want to just say thanks.
Yeah, in more than one ministerial meeting, we were reminded they're not funding agencies. Councillor Ramirez.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just echoing the fellow councillors here on UBCM, it was definitely a great event, and really kudos to you, Your Worship. Your conversations with all the ministers that we were part of was excellent. And again, thanks to Mr. Bornowski and the team to have created those binders. It just set us up for success right from the day one, which was fantastic. And yeah, first time there, learned a lot. I need to improve my strategy a little bit next year, but I'll work on that for the next 12 months. Outside of UBCM, I also had the privilege to volunteer with the Heritage Library at the Rainbow Reads as part of booked series. I remember last year around the same time, Your Worship, you did an excellent and expertly handled interview with poet Smokey Sumac. This year, also the same tradition continued. It was a well-crafted interview with Suzette Meyer on their Giller Prize-winning novel, The Sleeping Car Porter. The conversation was excellent in that, it just brought to life the book itself. Although I haven't read it, I'm going to read this in the next couple of months. But yeah, it was a well-attended session. Really good work on the part of Heritage Library and the Pride Society to bring this book to the community. Yeah, those are my two things.
Thank you. From my perspective, again, I don't want to put too many layers of paint on it, but want to thank staff and my fellow councillors for the UBCM experience. As people will know, it's also my first time. Learned a lot, and made a lot of valuable connections, which I, as Councillor Hamilton has said, with luck, and as Councillor Nixon has said, yield fruit as time goes on. And thanks to Mr. Bornowski and staff for preparing us for that. I felt very well prepared and very well supported, so appreciate that as well. I want to thank congratulate the Fernie Pride Society for an excellent Elk Valley Pride Festival. Even though we were away for most of it, I got to participate in some of it, and congratulate them on their efforts, and Courtney Baker, the organizer, chief organizer, for putting that whole thing together and supporting and enhancing our inclusive community. And I want to thank staff who participated and supported their efforts, setting up and tearing down and making facilities available for them for the work that you did, because it was struck me as a great success. And I would encourage folks to come out this Saturday to it's Truth and Reconciliation Day, of course, September 30th. And we have an event planned at City Hall. I almost said here at City Hall, but City Hall is now across the street, starting with the Yakat Atmacleat flag raising about 10 a.m. So please join us for that, and remind folks to wear their orange shirts. So thank you for that, and thank you, councillors. I will now ask Mr. McConnell to read the resolution to close.
Thank you, Your Worship. The recommendation is that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 90 sub 1 sub K of the community charter, as the subject matter being considered at this time relates to negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that in the view of council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
Can I have a mover? Councillor Nixon. Seconder, Councillor Ramirez. Any discussion? All in favor? I'm assuming Councillor Hamilton supports us, so.
He did raise this. There is a delay
Okay,
sometimes, so it might be that he's a bit slow on the uptake on seeing that. And that's not
just
because
slow.
of him, it's the system.
We did not for once assume you were slow, Mr. or Councillor Hamilton. So thank you. That's unanimous, and we will move into close, but we'll take a 10-minute recess. Thank you.